All right, for those of you who are joining, this is Ekaterina Walter. Welcome. We're glad to have you here with us. I am giving it another minute for the rest of the folks to join, and we will kick it off. Now, remember, you can ask the questions, so send it over our way, and hopefully I'll be able to address as many questions as I can. There is a question area where you can submit yours, so feel free to jump in and leave the question while we are while I'm presenting. All right, so you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and kick it off. We're 2 minutes past, so couple of household items first. Well, first of all, welcome and thank you for joining me today. I hope you will find the presentation as entertaining as you will find it valuable. Feel free to ask any questions. Throughout the webinar, I will address them in the Q&A section at the end. So again, there's a question area where you can drop them in. And now you will get a copy of the presentation and of this webinar recording after the event. So, you know, you don't have to take mad notes. Hopefully you can just relax and sit back and enjoy the conversation or the presentation. Now, a copy of the recording and PowerPoint will be sent to you and will be also available in the membership portal if you're a member approximately 48 hours after the webinar ends. For those of you who are members of the Digital Marketing Institute, welcome. Always great to see you. And who if you have the qualification with DMI, you can log 1 credit in your CPD scheme. So you can upload the certificate of attendance that you will receive at the end of the webinar as proof. And but this is only applicable to those who are qualified members. Otherwise, just enjoy the ride. All right, well, let's kick it off. Let's talk about brand storytelling. Now, you know, I've been talking about brand storytelling for a while. I'm a very passionate marketer, and I've done a ton of different marketing angles, if you will, including digital marketers. And so those of you who are online probably with a heavy focus on digital will notice that my presentation will focus on the digital element and what we can do as a brand to really truly sort of create communities and the tribe and affinity for our brand. And the conversation will focus on several things. One is what is the, you know, why do we need to lead with heart marketing? What does that mean to connect with our audience in the digital world, in the world where we have so much information and so much noise, and you know, less and less customers actually trust brands? And then what I will do is I will show you examples of companies that follow the sort of the new rules of storytelling. So the storytelling per se is changing, right? The way we were doing it before, you know, 10, 20 years ago isn't the same as now in our current environment, in the fast-paced environment of innovation and change in digital transformation. So I will talk to you about some of the things, not all of them, but how the rules, some of the rules, and how rules of brand storytelling are actually changing and shifting, why that's happening. But I'll do it through examples, and those examples will also show you what to do or potentially, you know, what not to do. My sort of latest book on the laws of brand storytelling is coming out in November, so I'll draw some examples from there, some examples from my sort of bigger library, but it'll hopefully give you context behind what am I saying and why am I saying this. So let's kick it off. Look, you know, all of you who are right now online, and listening to this are saying, look, we know this, right? Humans have been telling stories since the beginning of time. This is nothing new. This is no different from, you know, anything else we've heard before. And we also seen the statistics, right? I can quote stat after stat after stat to show you why storytelling is actually more memorable than facts and figures and your product information and other stuff that we're so used to pushing on people, right? Stories are up to 22 times more memorable. If you do it in a visual format, you'll know that not only our neural activity increases 5x when listening to a story, but also there's a mind-blowing stat that says when you actually do visual storytelling, so storytelling for visual formats, our brain processes visuals, 60,000 times faster than text. And so there's been a lot of shift to visual, a lot of shift to storytelling. None of it is new. We've seen the stats, but honestly, even with all of that, all the stats we've seen, I'll tell you what, this comic right here, this cartoon on the screen pretty much sums up what is going on with brands. I consult Fortune 100, 500 companies. I work with a lot of them. And every single time it comes down to this. Nobody at the end of the day, none of your, children or relatives will say, hey, can you read me some branded content as a story? A lot of companies still haven't grasped what it is to do content right. And what they call it content strategy, what they call it storytelling, it doesn't matter what you call it. How do you present your brand and what your brand really is? And this is the thing that marketers struggle the most. I mean, how do you go with head marketing or do you go with heart marketing? The very specific default is head marketing, right? Institutionalized language, your official press release. We need to make sure we hit every single point of benefit around our products and what those products can do for you, versus heart marketing, where it's harder for brands and executives to grasp that if you actually start with a story that might not necessarily directly relate to your product or what it is that you're trying to sell or market or your recent campaign. If you start and connect with emotional consumer, connect with their emotions versus their logic, you will be more successful in them remembering your brand, in them wanting to engage with your brand, in them wanting to advocate on behalf of your brand. But branding isn't just a great commercial. It isn't just the cutest logo. It isn't just a fun tagline or super sexy, we try to make it go viral campaign out there. Branding is more than that, right? And I think, you're like, okay, great. I took classes on branding. I read the books, but here's the reality. Let me boil it down to a very simple thing. Brand is not your logo. It just isn't. It isn't your approved color palette. It isn't the tagline of the day. That's not what your brand is. What your brand is your actions, stories your communities create around your mission, the extraordinary, the personalized customer service that you provide to every single person when they have an issue or a problem, right? Experiences every single person has with your company. So when I talk about branding, the definition of branding is changing, period. End of story. It is what they say it is, not what you say it is. You can't control it, but more so, brand or your perception around what your brand is a sum of interaction. Now, interactions, mind you, real interactions or even perceived interactions. Somebody saw you, somebody else having interaction with your brand, whether it's negative or positive, and they might have made their own conclusions about it. But it's the sum of interactions that any particular person, not just any customer, it could be anybody, your prospect, your stakeholder, your partner, right? Vendors you work with, it doesn't matter. Employees, that every single one of those people has with the company across all touch points. We'll touch on digital right now, but there is, offline, online, indirect relationship, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of different touch points that your brand is comprised of. So before I jump in and give you very specific things of what you can think through, what you can do when it comes to brand storytelling and how the rules there are changing, I need you to understand that if you're still hanging on to the whole premise of brand is our logo and I got to protect it, like a watchdog, that isn't what your brand is anymore. It is your actions. Now, when it comes to marketing, you go, well, great, that's fantastic, right? I can't control, what sales team does, and I can't control what customer care team does. To the extent you can. So, for example, social media engagement sits a lot of times in marketing versus customer care before customer care even picks it up. And all the brands I work with, 98% that's the case. And those are your these are your platforms where you are the first you're the face of the company, and how you engage with people there, no matter whether they have an issue or a question, or just want to make fun of you, whatever that is, but you are the first line of defense. So think about, when I talk branding, when I talk brand storytelling, I think every single interaction that possibly could happen. Now, if you would have to ask me for the most basic, the most profound conclusion, what it is that you got to get out of today, I want to give it to you now, not at the end. I want to give it to you now, because that's what you need to be thinking about when I show you the stories, when I show you the examples. And that is, brand storytelling isn't about creating insane marketing campaigns. I don't care whether they went viral. I don't care whether your commercial is nice, hot, and sexy. I really don't care. Storytelling isn't about creating marketing campaigns. It is about building tribes and inspiring movements. So when you think about how the perception of brand storytelling is shifting, some of the coolest, best brands, what they do is they look at, how do I use an opportunity to launch a campaign, to launch a product, to just tell a story, to talk to people about what we actually believe in, how we use that as an opportunity to build tribes, to spark movements around the same passion points that we could have, our customers could have, our employees can have. It doesn't matter. Brand storytelling isn't just a regular definition of marketing. It is, how do you take every opportunity to do marketing in the right way, to the right audience, and with heart, not with a head, not how it's always been done, but with heart. Now, the reason why I put this is a quote from my new book. So the new book, The Laws of Brand Storytelling, actually coming out here in a couple of weeks. The reason I put it in here is because in the book, me and my co-author, Jessica Julia, we look at 30 laws of brand storytelling that every marketer, and especially every digital marketer, needs to know. And what we show is this diagram, right? And we came up with what we call a storyteller journey. And how do you, as a marketer, doesn't matter whether you just create content, or whether you run the whole marketing division. Heck, this is even to an extent applicable to other departments around the company. But how do you, as a storyteller, take the right journey and think through it? So you start with knowing who you are, right? What you believe in, what's your mission, who you are as a company. Then understanding your goals. That's where the strategy laws coming in. There's a whole strategic framework that you just can follow. It's easy to follow process. Then we go into discovery laws. How do you find your stories? How do you bring them to life? Because that is what a lot of companies struggle with. Then you go into crafting your story. So the story making laws actually focus around how to do the best way and best format for the right audience, etc. And then the channel laws actually tell you how to distribute that story. How do you share the story across the channels in the right way? And then you finish with engaging with your communities, because that's what's going to drive more. That's what's going to basically provide, if done right, lead generation and more conversation and community growth, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a structure to it. Now, today we only have an hour, right? Less than an hour if you consider the Q&A portion. So the reason why I put it out there is pick up the book. All of it is explained. There's a ton of examples, a ton of frameworks that you can plug your stuff in. But what I want to focus today is very specifically certain examples that really could have a potential to reshape the way you think about what storytelling for you, storytelling strategy, storytelling approach could potentially look like, right? So let's dive right in. So several things that I really think companies are missing is, one of them is opening your kimono. right? So this is an image. I know it's a funny one, but this is an image from National Geographic. Now, National Geographic does fantastic behind the scenes photos. So this is one of them when they were trying to do a shoot, but it went a little wrong. Love that picture. Now, the reason why I'm putting it out here is because I want you to understand that in the world of digital transparency, you have to actually build a trust with your customers, you have to put yourself out there. You have to open your kimono and say, hey, you know, we're willing to show you behind the scenes. We want to show you who we are. We want to connect you with you on a human level, beyond just your cold set logo, right? Connect with them on human level. Now, one of the stories that I have from my Intel days, when we early on, when back when we just started to grow the community and went from 0 to millions, right? And social media was still a fad in a lot of companies. You know, we've been trying out new things with content, and this is one of my favorite examples where we were just walking around and we just walked past, you know, on campus, we walked past the engineer desk. So this is a desk of an engineer. Now, to any sane woman, this probably looks like a mess, not a holy mess. Now, to our audiences who were nerds, and I know you're laughing on the other end, so I'll tell you what, the nerd is the new sexy, so don't laugh. Now, to nerds, right? This is us opening ourselves up and saying, look what Inside Intel looks like. And so this simple image was the one that our management really freaked out about initially. And we said, well, give it a little bit of time. And then it ended up being that particular year the most shared, commented on, and engaged with image. Now, this image probably, I don't know, 8 years old, 10 years old, way back when we just first starting. That's not the point. The point is, back when we were playing with this, nobody else, everybody was afraid to just sort of open themselves up and show who they are, show the vulnerability, show behind the scenes. Now more and more brands do that, but it is an insane, it's low-hanging fruit, but it's an amazing way to actually show your human side and connect with the audiences. So think about how you can do this differently. And when I say customer care is the new marketing, and yes, customer care is the new marketing, folks. Those marketers who are on the phone, this shouldn't be anything new to you. I know some marketers resisted this for a while, but the reality is customer care needs to be marketers BFFs, right? They need to be connected in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to digital and social connection with communities and your customers out there across the platforms. Now, I'll tell you what, customer care may be the new marketing, but customer care done right is very, very tough. And so what you want to do, you want to personalize the experiences as much as you can. And I'm not saying you can scale those personalized experiences easily or at all. That shouldn't be something that stops you. I'm saying that go an extra mile to do something that the customer doesn't expect. That is how you earn loyalty. That is a whole new way to do marketing. And this is right now, right there, available to you. You're just missing the opportunities. If you really look at it, and if you really look at your communities right now and who's engaging with you, I can guarantee you find a ton of missed opportunities for engagement. Now, this is my personal story. Again, not something that happened recently, a number of years back, but it's still my favorite, just because, you know, those stories are really fine few in between, even for those of us who are out there invisible, you would think, right? But that's the reality. And so this is my favorites. Now, REI is a fantastic brand. It's in Northwest, and this is the type of brand that produces the, you know, outdoor gear. So we use it to go, you know, when you go hiking, camping, you know, sport, anything. They have a huge variety. So it's a fantastic company, one of my favorites. And I could literally go on. I have like at least 5 examples in my book around REI and what they've done as a whole, as a brand, not just like one-off examples like this one. But this is what happened to me. One Christmas, I was looking for a gift, and I said, hey guys, help me out. You know, I am just kind of behind on my Christmas shopping. What can I do? And I was shocked, absolutely shocked, that in about 30 minutes, I actually checked out my feed and I got a custom video response from the team. Not only I got a custom video response where they say, hey, Katrina, thanks for the question. We checked you out. We did some of our research. This was, you're doing a lot of fantastic stuff. We recommend, here's the stuff we recommend based on who you are, right? And this is a person called Green Vest. So these are employees that work on site. They know the inventory very well. And so they shot this video and sent it back to me. And I actually followed through on the suggestion. And my gosh, I mean, I've never loved the brand better, more, right? So interestingly enough, I connected with the team and they said, well, no, we just set up the cameras in a couple of our stores and engaged our Green Vests, answered probably about 90 people in the matter of like 2 weeks, who reached out to us and were desperate for gift suggestions, like myself. And it was pretty easy. We just kind of did a quick research on them and we suggested some of the things that they might like. And I said, okay, great, that's fantastic. You got an ROI on that? And they're like, yep, during those 2 weeks, just those 90 videos, those video responses tripled the traffic to our site. Now, I don't know about you, I'll volunteer for tripling my traffic. I mean, talk about making marketing personal and really truly engaging in the right way. Now, then you take those folks who are your advocates, who already love your brand, who already are on your site, and you basically activate them. Now, this isn't going on anymore, Dunkin' Donuts fan of the week, and I am so sad about it, but they used to do every week fan of the week, that they would pick on a Monday, and they would look at all the like images and videos submitted on the page, and they would just pick one fan and they would feature them, and people loved it. Not only they did that, they engaged their employees. So the image on lower image right here you see is when Dunkin' employees got together and they decided that they're going to paint their nails in Dunkin' Donut colors, right? And I guess they're now dropping the word donuts and they're going to be just Dunkin'. So anyway, long story short, you have to look for ways. Instead of what is the new marketing campaign we have to create from scratch, activate the passionate advocates and let them tell your story. I mean, what can be cooler than that? And honestly, I can guarantee you right now, there is a ton of little touch points you guys are missing. You just are. Like one of the examples is, thank you page. Another example is page not found, 404 page, right? And some of the brands do some really cool, hilarious things that people love and they giggle and they share. And instead of being pissed they didn't find the page, they actually laugh about it, right? And then they go try to find that information somewhere else. And so all of the little touch points, I can guarantee you half of them right now you're missing. So don't think big, here's an enormous campaign and we got to get that out there. Think about every little single one that you could improve so that the broader brand image actually improves with it. And there's a lot been said about real-time marketing. People call it agile marketing. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's a lot of names. People love it, people hate it. I don't care whether you love it or hate it. The reality is, there is such a thing as relevance, and there's such a thing as real time, and there's such a thing as relevance having a deadline, right? So don't miss an opportunity to do something cool. Here's an example, and Arbus did a lot of fun things with this. But when Pharrell Williams was at the Grammys and doing his speech, he was wearing this hat that sort of looks like Arbus logo, and so they decided to have fun with him and say, hey Pharrell, can we have our hat back? Right, to which Pharrell replied, hey, are you trying to start a fight here? But he enjoyed it. Other people enjoyed it. Other brands jumped in on the bandwagon and said, hey, best, I wish our logo was a hat, so we could have tweeted a tweet, and et cetera, et cetera. And the list went on, and a lot of other brands sort of piled on and appreciated how Arby's was creative about it. But the reality is, to execute real-time opportunities, right, you have to have the back of your house in order, right? So look for those opportunities. If you don't have a listening tool in place, you're already lost. You're already way behind. But look for the opportunities of what people are saying about your brand. Where can you jump in and do something fun with it? And then have the back of your house in order where stakeholders work in real time together to come up with the great ideas or really smart, snarky responses, which we'll see in examples that are coming up. Now, there is also the kind of thing of, okay, well, so how do we respond to negativity? And some people prefer to just go silent. Big, Big mistake. To really build up your brand as somebody who's human, who's approachable, who's trustworthy, you have to respond to your critics. One of my favorite examples is how Reese's approached it. So Reese's came out, I think it's like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they came out with a Christmas tree Reese's chocolate, right? So once it hit the shelves, people started being upset about the fact that the chocolate pieces don't actually look like trees. So somebody posted, here's an example. Does this look like a Christmas tree to you? And so they've got a ton of those things, and the more people piled on, and like, yeah, it's just a piece of chocolate, it doesn't look like a tree. So instead of going silent or saying, oh my God, well, we've done an issue and I'm sorry, apology, Reese's decided to go the other route and say, let's have fun with it. So they came out with a campaign, hashtag all trees are beautiful. And they started posting things like that. Reese's celebrates trees of all shapes and sizes. It's not what it looks like, it's what it tastes like. Here's another example. Woke up like this. I mean, awesome, right? Here's another one. Reese's trees break the mold. Just as controversial, but a lot more delicious, right? And the list goes on and on. And so when I tell you that, make sure you take advantage of the opportunities to really pump your brand. I mean, the amount of sales that they increased because of this campaign versus, what could have been a very negative windfall if they either would have ignored it or didn't engage is just, I mean, it's night and day. So develop the processes and playbooks in the back end that actually address some of these things in real time, and also don't take yourself too seriously. Just play with it, see how it goes, and there's nothing negative about this, but it's amazing. But what my favorite part about it is that some people just started jumping and say, no, you're right, there's nothing wrong with the trees, they have more substance, more PB and chocolate, what's not to love? And so somebody named Dawn said that, and so Reese's replied to Dawn and said, some people are just born with good taste, Dawn. So they continued the conversation moving forward beyond just that they're creative, and I just love it. I just really think that building a brand and brand storytelling such as this is critical nowadays in the digital age. Here's the snarky ones that I mentioned, right? So Clayton Hove is ad executive, and he actually is, every now and then he'd go on Twitter and poke at brands. And this is an oldie but goodie. It's one of my favorite examples of all time. So Clayton actually tweeted this out at Smart Car. He said, so a bird had crapped on a smart car, totaled it, right? Now this is funny. People laugh, people share, this is fantastic. So Smart Car could have ignored it, and I mean, it's not like he had a huge following, but instead they decided to actually take up a challenge. What did they do? They said they created an infographic that actually specifies how many in reality bird crabs actually takes, right? To total Smart Car. There was pigeon crabs, there's turkey crabs, there's like all these different birds. And then they said, couldn't have been one bird. Sounds more like 4.5 million. No, seriously, we did the math. Here you go. And then Clayton actually replied back, wrote a blog post and said, oh my God, I was outsmarted by Smart Car, best social media response ever. Fantastic. It won awards. It put the Smart Car sort of on the map in the industry. Really great opportunity to say, instead of just ignoring it, what cool stuff can we do with it? The other example that I would give you is use the data at your disposal. Spotify is one of my favorite examples. Now, everybody has data. Everybody has interesting data or boring data, depends on how you look at it. Now, but no matter where you are, what industry you're in, there's a data that you probably could share externally in a fun way. So Spotify actually looked at the different playlists and created a whole campaign around it. And so they've looked at the titles of playlists people are creating, and they played with it in a creative way with their billboards, with the digital ads, et cetera, et cetera. So this is one of them that says, dear person who played sorry 42 times on Valentine's Day, what did you do, right? And then here's additional ones. So for example, Someone made a root canal song playlist, probably because they never had a flossing song playlist. I mean, wow, that poor guy, I mean, a gal, must have been some root canal. And I mean, the list goes on and on. And there is even people that started actually wanting their ad featured. So they started, here's a person who made a playlist. I want my playlist featured in Spotify ads, that Spotify responded to, right? So interesting data points. It's sort of like, did you know type of approach, but at the same time, data that you have access to that doesn't, necessarily violate the sort of the personal details of your customers, but also has fun with some of the statistics, for example, or some funnest playlists that are featured. Now, that first thing you do, what do you do first thing you see this? Oh, you're gonna go create another playlist on Spotify, right? Because that's what I want to do when I see this. So looking at a variety of ways besides just pushing your product and pushing your features and trying to sort of shove it down people's throat, figure out what are the emotional, interesting ways you can actually connect with people based on data you have, the information you have. Or maybe even if you have a ton of amazing information, instead of putting out a white paper there, slice it up into infographics, visual elements, snackable visual content that people can truly engage with, so that it makes them want to go farther and actually download the white paper and read the white paper. And honestly, a lot of people will tell you, well, here's all the fun campaigns that the people did. I will tell you that this is the least talked about element of brand storytelling and brand building there is. And that is, always be classy especially when it comes to your competitors. I mean, there's so many companies that are just totally bombing in brand perception because they either treat their customers poorly, or more so treat their competitors poorly, especially their smaller competitors. Now, my favorite recent example is Bud Light. Now, Bud Light had a competitor called Matisse Brewing Company. Now, they've actually created a beer that sort of borrowed, if you will, the whole dilly dilly, idea that Bud Light came up with. And as we all know, Bud Light is king of beer, and they could have totally slapped them with illegal action, et cetera, et cetera. But what they instead did was very classy. So they send this person raised a page with the message from the king, and on your screen you can see what the message read. I mean, my favorite was, hey, let it be known, that you did X, Y, and Z. Congrats on the launch of your beer. However, dilly dilly is the motto of our realm. So we humbly ask that you keep this limited edition, one time only run, by order of a king, right? And disobedience shall be met with additional scrolls, then warning, then a private tour of the pit of misery. It's just amazing. And instead of just just announcing that, they also said, hey, we would love to offer some game tickets to two of your finest employees to join us towards the game, et cetera, in Minneapolis. So and the sign, yours truly, Bud Light. And the whole classy approach of this act is, and there's a video out there, you can watch it, but it's not about crushing your competition. It's about bringing the whole industry up and lifting it up by being cordial. I mean, they could have totally put this company out of business, but they didn't. And they've made a friend, and they made they created a ton of advocacy for themselves as a brand as a result of that. So when you look again across, well, what kind of awesome marketing campaign can I create? Why don't you look at also ways to address issues in an interesting, fun, maybe classy way? Now, this is some of the responses, some of the tweets that people put out there, and they're saying, hey, that was gracious and funny, very classy. I'm switching to Bud Beer. I mean, they're just, they're making friends and influencing people. Let's face it, that's all there is to it. And when it comes to social engagement, I kind of look at social media strategy, and I say, part of it should be following 3 E's. engage, entertain, enchant, right? It's not all about entertaining. Now, obviously, those things get picked up, but it's about the meaningful engagement. Instead of saying, "Oh, thanks, we're sorry you're having an issue. Here's a boilerplate template for response. Here's a link you can go. Hopefully, try to resolve it." You might hit 3 different departments on the way. You might get more frustrated, but here's the boilerplate. It's actually engaging, actually trying to be helpful, finding a solution, and enchanting people in the process. Now, my favorite is Wendy's. Now, you guys, these are some of the coolest, funnest responses that are my absolutely favorite. Now, Wendy's has a whole team of what they call monkeys. They don't take themselves seriously, but they do take Wendy's as a brand seriously and the product seriously. But they're literally becoming a destination for people coming and just grabbing a smile and engaging with a team that knows what it means to be human. And so this is some of my favorite responses. People go in and ask random questions like, my friend wants to go to McDonald's, what should I tell them? The answer is, find new friends. Go into In and Out. What should I get? Wendy's. Out, right? And so you kind of like they even create the splits and bars Wendy's, and they actually they actually come up with a lot of fun things like poems and just sayings and in so fantastic way, right? Like they actually were hosting roasts, right? So because they're so fun and so snarky, people actually say, hey, why don't you roast me? So one of the folks asked for that, and Wendy's response was, get one of your 51 followers to roast you. I mean, they try to be kind about it, but the reality is it's not just about pushing your message. It's about engaging with people in an evergreen way, in a way that actually is human. Every now and then maybe you'll cross the line and you're going to say, I'm sorry, and you're going to admit it, and you're going to say, hey, we're all human here. But it's, what's funny to us may not be funny to others, and move on. And Wendy's does that really, really well. One other thing that I wanted to discuss is consider your audience. Now, you've heard it so many times, you're sick of it, right? Hey, consider the audience and what channel and who they are and what they want, all that sort of stuff that everybody tells you at Marketing 101, if not 100. What I will tell you is there's a lot of fun ways to look at your audience. So for example, there's a lot of brands that are now looking at how to engage millennials and Gen Z in a different, unique way, or how to engage the audiences they haven't previously been truly traditionally engaged with. So this is an example of H&R Block. Really love these guys. They actually created the whole hipsterification of taxes one year to appeal to millennial audience. And one of the images, some of the images they came up with there were just hilarious. Hashtag hipster tax facts. And so one of them is here: tax professionals recommend against Instagramming your completed 1099 forms, right? You think that would be straightforward. Still funny. Growing organic arugula on fire escape does not enable you to take a farm tax credit, right? And I mean, it goes on and on and on, and it just creates this really light environment that millennials really loved and engaged with. They could have created their own videos, which they did, and just really truly engage in with the brand in a different way. So when you consider the new audience, consider how can you do this in a way that really appeals to those you want to engage with. And now let's talk about formats, right? I mean, hell, my second book, the new one is the third one that's coming out, but my second book was actually on the power of visual storytelling. And, I talked a lot about, hey guys, consider the formats. I mean, honestly, long form still has its place, still has its effectiveness, but there's a lot of, because the noise is increasing and because we live in the age of infobicity, it's really hard to stand out from the noise. And storytelling as well as visual format of storytelling actually is one way to really stand out from the noise. So when I look at how creative can you get with your snackable visual content, use formats that might be new, might not be overused yet, like cartoons, for example. This is one of the marketing efforts that get satisfaction launched, and they were acquired by a different company, et cetera, et cetera. But this is, they talk to community managers, right? So this is one of the cartoons that actually, one of 10 that they created and put on posters and as digital ads on promoted at events, and created some swag out of them, and people loved it because they really dug at the core of what community managers struggle with every single day. And honestly, when I talk to the creator, Tom Fishburne, right, who goes by Marketunist, if you don't follow them, follow him, sign up for daily or his regular newsletters. He's fantastic. Now, when I talked to him and I said, well, what are your clients seeing as a result of using this new medium? He said, well, interestingly, cartoons, especially cartoons that are used regularly in, like, for example, newsletters, they increase open rates to 45%, sometimes 50, versus industry average of 5 to 8. There is infographics, right? And there are statistics around publishers who use infographics grow traffic. And I mean, the list goes on and on. One of the latest formats is cinemagraphs. I love cinemagraphs, right? Because they drive attention to a specific thing, to one focal point. This is an example. This is just one example that you're seeing. But fashion brands, beauty brands, the list goes on and on and on. You know, auto brands, they're all starting to use cinemagraphs to really just sort of highlight the point and do something really cool, while this medium is still pretty new and not overused by other brands. So think about how you're using your visuals to tell the stories, because visuals, you can tell a whole story in just one visual. And before I wrapped up and sort of launch into a Q&A, I will say that there's one thing that I would really pay attention to, and that would be not being afraid to take a stand. Don't be Switzerland, don't be a sidewalk, don't let people walk all over you. If you believe in something, right, make sure you're really truly taking a stand. So one of my favorite examples is this example, and that is Honey Maid. Now, Honey Maid basically created the whole campaign around being wholesome. They've included parents of different diversities, different colors, different orientations, different geographies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So different, just different sets of parents that are all very loving, very into being a great family, very into being the best parents for their kids. And so that wholesome campaign, as expected, generated a lot, some negative response, right, from some organizations that don't believe in the same things that Honey Maid believes in, right, as in wholesome existence, wholesome family, wholesome food, etc. And so instead of taking that and going on offensive, they actually issued a video response. Unfortunately, I can't play a video. Go and check it out. I mean, it is insane. It's one of the best video responses by brands I've ever seen. So they really took a stand. And what they've done with this video is they've taken all of the tweets and comments and shares that were negative, and they asked the artist. So if you see right here on the screen, right, they actually created the word love. So all that, the whole word is created out of the rolled up piece of papers that the artist sort of rolled up of negative responses, and they arranged it on the floor of a warehouse in the word saying love. But what was really cool about it is they took all the positive responses, that was 10x the time of negative, towards their campaign, and they arranged it all the way around the word love. And basically they said, look, the only thing that really matters in this life and for us is love. And that was just beautiful. I mean, one of the coolest responses, examples, without getting into fights and words. And they've created a video that was just absolutely beautiful with the idea that really touches the strings of your hearts. And so when I look at how brand storytelling changing radically, the way it's changing is it actually is moving away from words to moving to actions. Younger generations, they don't believe when you say something. They don't say, well, we're gonna go do this, or we're really cool. Nobody cares. But when you say, look, we do support our communities, and you actually go do something about it, and you actually drive positive change, storytelling is moving away from pretty words, pretty images to actual actions. That's what your customers are looking for. That's what your customers are going to be judging you on, moving forward. And sort of to close up on this topic, if you will, I want to wrap up with same thing I wrapped up my book, is saying you guys got to remember that the most powerful form of brand storytelling, and you can substitute brand storytelling with marketing, right? But the most powerful form of brand storytelling is when customers don't realize they're being marketed to, when customers can really connect with the same things that you care about, with your mission, with your goals, with the cool things you're doing, maybe even outside of your product creation, innovation, and marketing, right? It is really connecting with who you are. And a lot of times it's not just who you are as a brand, it's who your employees are and how much they love working with you and for you. That's another one biggest myth. That's low-hanging fruit, is engaging your employees in telling your stories. But a lot of people are afraid, right? Why? Well, they have reason to be afraid. Their cultures suck, right? Or they just haven't created a culture of empowerment and passionate, innovation. And so, making sure sort of you're opening yourself up to a different ways to market, different ways to tell your story, and maybe telling a story is different. That is one of the things that's going to drive your sort of brand recognition and brand affinity, if you will. So, with that, remembering the message from the beginning of our conversation, which is stop just creating marketing campaigns. Create movements, really inspire, your tribes to talk with you and about you, to this particular, closing, which is create something that's either useful or something that really truly connects on an emotional level beyond just, telling people about your brand, benefits, et cetera, et cetera. So, with that, let me move to questions. Now, I will tell you, I was super excited because apparently we had a question we've received even before our webinar started. And the question comes from Teo. And Teo is asking, my question is, what is the journey to telling an effective brand story on social media, especially with respect to an upcoming launch? What should the sequence of the narrative content be, if there is any? Fantastic question, Teo. I will tell you that on a very simple, basic level, there's a lot of other ideas you can play with within that, but on a basic level, if you have a launch coming up and you figure out we want to figure out how to engage your communities with it, think about your approach as pre, during, and post, just like what you would do with an event, right? But each phase is going to be slightly different. So when you tell your story about your brand, about your product, about launch, before the launch actually happens, do fun things like teasers, what potentially can come out of it, what you can do, in a way without giving away a ton of information. But maybe, your current customer who was in beta drops a hint, or maybe your employees tell others, right, on social communities how excited they are and what that potentially might be. There's all kinds of ways of sort of putting teasers out there that are interesting in a lot of formats, including video. Now, during launch, think about the ways of how you can package what you are actually launching in a way that's entertaining and interesting versus, well, read this up, look at all the benefits that we have, right? So you basically find creative approaches to, hosting additional information, providing how-to videos. Always do really, really well, especially when you're selling something that's tangible. If you're selling a service, you can do a lot more with it. But think about what it is that would be useful when you launch a product. Don't just do press release, do a video press release. Make sure your executive and engage and have fun with it, and maybe showcase what they would do with a particular product. I mean, without knowing specifics or a certain example of the product, it's hard to play with different ideas. But there is other ways to actually tell a story, or maybe let your customers tell a story. Just work with some customers ahead of time and let them test it out, let them provide feedback, incorporate the feedback, and let them go tell the story for you. It is all about what would make sense, continue to align with your brand voice and brand as who you are, your brand's purpose. And then just instead of just pushing people full of factoids and here's a list of benefits, figure out other ways to do it. And then when you do post launch, there's ways to focus on potentially even elements of support. Show your customers how you can support them in an interesting way. Make sure that they're happy when they talk to you and engage with you. So there's some flashy stuff that you can do, which is testimonials that are coming your way, or people maybe putting out their own content, and you can aggregate and curate and feature it and say, hey, thanks, this has been a great response. But there is also an element of don't forget about utility. Your success, your product launch success, will depend on how well your process, your buying and your servicing process works, right? Because at the end of the day, as marketers, we want to have these people come back, buy more, and bring their friends. And so when you look at the totality of it, I highly recommend that you actually collaborate and partner with folks to ensure that it is, that you're actually getting every single step of the journey, set up and working properly. Because if you are, saying fun things on social media, but none of your product or your follow-up actually is working, then none of that is going to be good, right? So that's an answer to your question. I'm getting a ton of questions, actually, you guys. I'm sorry if I won't be able to answer them all. Let me just filter through them real quick and see if you can hear anything. I mean, if you can actually, let's see if you can. Some people can't hear something, but hopefully that got fixed. Okay, so here's some questions. Is brand storytelling a good way to launch a brand business digital transformation strategy? Absolutely. So think about storytelling. That's one of the things I worked with companies around is launching their change. So change management is hard as it is, but digital strategy or transformation across the company is even harder. I've done it myself on the brand side. I've consulted a ton of different brands around it, and I'll tell you that the best way to actually do it is to tell the story, who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, having your executive sponsor actually engage in an interesting and fun way. So people are tired. People are tired of SharePoint and just information that's endless and dry and texty, right? Like, figure out what is how you can use the whole storytelling journey that I showed you around actually launching your transformational changes or strategies inside the company. Absolutely, 100%. It applies to pretty much everything. And then somebody's asking, I think it was Joanne Marn, if I'm reading correctly, what is building tribes? So when I say building tribes, I mean building your communities around your brand. It doesn't matter what channel they're on, but it could be your micro communities, your macro communities, people who are engaging with you or creating their own communities, right? Like a Coca-Cola Facebook page actually wasn't created by brand, but by Coca-Cola. It was created by fans, passionate fans. They still manage that because they really love the brand, and Coke let them do it. And so when I talk about building tribes, it is build communities around yourself. So when something comes up, they can jump in, have a conversation with you. They have a platform to engage. And honestly, when the crisis comes, you guys, and I personally lived through that on the brand side, when the crisis comes, these are the people, your tribe, your communities are the people who actually jump in and defend you, and it works so much better than if a brand is trying to do it. So the question comes from Lubner, if I'm reading the name right. Sorry if I messed it up. Should we have to update our brand storytelling, such as this, on a yearly basis, and should we have fixed one, for our brand? Should it be fixed or should we be changing it? So great question, fantastic question. It is absolutely fluid. If you're talking about telling your brand story and it's fixed, and you kind of know, hey, I'm going to have these yearly annual activities across the board, you're just basically stuck with this very frigid framework. Not only are you stuck, your budget is stuck, your executives are stuck with, like, well, this is what we want to go execute. However, if you keep it fluid and you say, here's an opportunity we're going to pluck out, here's an opportunity we see, here's what we're going to take advantage of, and you keep it agile, it is absolutely a different feel and a different success that you're going to have. Another thing, don't forget, you have to optimize. I mean, you guys, if you're not optimizing, you're not a good spot. Let me use that word. It is so important that you optimize. When you tell different stories on macro level, big ones, right, or smaller every single day when you engage with your customers or your communities around you, when you actually try out different approaches, different stories, different formats, different channels, I mean, the list goes on and on and on, right? You have to optimize and figure out and measure what works and what doesn't, because this is your audience, and you might think you know your audience, but you really don't as much. And so the way the strategy and the storytelling strategy and content strategy and social media strategy, etc., needs to adjust is based on the data that you're getting in real time. So there's no way in heck it should be fixed. And if it is, you're probably leaving at least 50% of effectiveness and real impact of your storytelling efforts behind, right, over on the table. Let's see. So it seems like the question says, we are a startup, and the question comes from Marina. Excuse me. We're a startup that builds a new product and service. What recommendation can you give on marketing strategy? We need to grow our audience and become trustworthy. Basically, start with, great question. So I've actually worked with startups, at startups, created one, and still advise some startups. So one of the things that I'm going to say is look at the low-hanging fruit. What's available right now? Which is, what is your story of your founder? Where do they come from? Where your employees come from? What your customers? What kind of stories your customers would tell about you and around your service or your product? If it's absolutely new to the market, you pretty much, the sky's the limit. You can create anything you want. If you have competitors, look at how the story is told from the competitor standpoint and how you can be different. It's all about how you can be different, how you can differentiate. Now, one of the key things I will tell you as a marketer, create your own category if you can. If you can't, create your own vocabulary. Create a vocabulary that is very easily understood, and put it in your taglines and put it in your messages that actually tell people who you are, and it's really easy to grasp, right? Identify your key audience, even if you have several potentially, right? For example, if your product is for marketers, but then also customer care can use it and sales can use it, and identify who your key audience is, go after that and create a message that actually resonates for them. And just have fun. I mean, look at what Dollar Shave Club did, right, with their video. They just had a ton of fun with who they are, why they launched this product, and they just never took themselves seriously. Be human. Put yourselves out there. It doesn't matter what role you're in. If there are people who are willing to go there, create constant videos and content pieces, etc., to really truly promote your product and it become more visible, make every single one of your employee evangelists, especially your your CEO, your direct executive staff, etc. I mean, there's just a lot of fun you can have with it, especially if it's a new product, because it's really up to you how you define what that is. I mean, if you've seen Will It Blend, Will It Blend is basically a blender. And it's nothing new. It is oversaturated product. But what these guys did is they take their blender, and then every either day or every week they would blend some weird stuff in there. And it's not fruits and vegetables. It's like your iPhone. Will the iPhone blend? Will the wood stick blend? Will they, and they've created such a huge following that their sales went through the roof. And that is because they looked at it, in unique way. So that's, that would be my piece of advice. I'm going to take one more question. And again, you can actually get a hold of me on social networks. If there's a burning question I still haven't answered, let me know. If you're a member of DMI, you can connect with me on there. But here's a question that came in around negative feedback, right? So around the piece on answering negative feedback or trolling, do you think the position should change if it is an intergovernmental organization or a government page or a charity page where people are basically sharing fake news or something designed to get a rise out of organization that they post? Now, you don't reply to trolls. I don't care who you are. You don't reply to trolls. You don't engage with them. If you really build a good community, what happens? Community jumps in and says, "Get off our page." We don't, we're not here for your entertainment or you using it as your own political platform. We want to get the actual news. You have to moderate. If this is the situation you're in, you have to have strong moderation guidelines. You have to post what is allowed in that particular channel, what is not allowed. And you would be very transparent. Here's the type of stuff that's going to be removed, and then you just kind of either do it yourself or you engage a moderation service that could remove, based on criteria you give them, remove the posts that make no sense or don't serve any purpose. Now, if there is a legitimate, a legitimate complaint, do not delete that. You're going to get more flag for it than not, and make sure you address this as much as you can. With government organization, you really have to be sort of careful, right? So there's some limitations on what you do, what you can say, but it is your house. Like, it is your house. You create the moderation guidelines based on what it is that you want, who you are and what you believe in and what you use in that particular page or channel for. So don't be afraid to take a stand, as we talked, right? Take a stand and say, hey, it is all published ahead of time. We're treating you fairly. If you have questions, let's take it offline. But do not engage trolls. Do not, because they only feed off of that. And then delete stuff that you think is inappropriate that actually falls within the guidelines you already specified ahead of time. Well, look, a ton more questions to answer. I'm sorry I didn't get to all of them. Thank you for having you all. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. Again, recording will be available. Thanks for hanging out with me this hour. It was just absolute pleasure, and I hope to see you on social networks.